Throughout Chinese history, it is the combination of the Confucian foxes and the legalist lions that have held this empire together. An example of this can be found from the civilizational cycle of the fall of the Zhou into the Warring States period to the establishment of the Han Dynasty in 202 BC. But this pattern has repeated itself through Chinese history. In the brutal Warring States period, thinkers roamed around, spreading their philosophies, looking for patrons. From the eastern state of Liu came Confucianism. Eventually, it would emerge as a fox's philosophy. It asked the question, how do we build a good moral society? How do we be good moral people? Now, there is much to say for Confucius, and the man was far more than a mere supporter of the status quo, as he's come to be known for. He attempted within his own state a radical revolution to centralize power. In his later life, he changed focus, focusing on recording history, compiling classics, and attempting to answer the aforementioned questions of how to be good. It is this part of his life which he became known for the most. It isn't surprising that this message would appeal to sections of the landed gentry and would come to be associated with them. Over the subsequent centuries after Confucius's death in 470 BC, it is no surprise indeed that they would emphasize this side of Confucius and not his former life of revolution. Most states were feudal and their respective literates were usually Confucian, and the state of Qin in the west was no exception to this rule. And yet Confucian morality was not what was needed to unify the states and end the wars. Evidently, it had continued, regardless of the fact that most of the elite were Confucian. The warring and constant bloodshed went on without end, seemingly, until one man decided to take matters into his own hands to put an end to it. And this was a man who would attempt to answer a different question: how to establish a lasting order. And for that, what was needed was a lion's answer. Enter Xiang Yang, born Wei Yang, a radical from the state of Wei, born in 390 BC, right in the centre of the Warring States period, which began in around 470 BC. From an early age, Xiang Yang was taught and emphasised the importance of written law by thinkers like Li Kui, who had attempted to reform the state of Wei before him. In 365 BC, at the age of 25, he became a retainer Chen Xiang to the Wei Emperor, King Hui. His mentor, Gong Shu Cuo, was impressed and recommended him to higher station. Unfortunately for the king and the Wei state, eventually Xiang Yang would go unused, despite the warnings of his advisor to use him or kill him rather than let him go. Instead, Xiang Yang heard the call for talents by King Shao of the neighbouring state of Qin. He left the state of Wei. Xiang Yang's answer was Fa and answered his question of how can the state become strong. This was music to Duke Xiao's ears, where his laws were put into practice. They were breathtakingly simple and beautifully clear. A person's worth was based on two things alone: farming and soldiering. Succeed and you were rewarded with land and rank. Fail and you were punished severely, regardless of your status. He even punished the crown prince's tutor, Prince Qian, something which would come back to haunt him. For the first time, merit threatened birthright. Understandably, this angered the entrenched landed gentry, who were mostly Confucian at the time. But Xiang Yang's laws were put into practice from 356 BC onwards, and he built trust by keeping his word. He sidelined merchants and nobles, making the state the engine of all power. The result, a motivated, terrifying war machine that began to unify the states. But the lion who forged the blade is liable to have it turned against him. When his patron died, Duke Xiao, the vengeful nobles who had bided their time, and the returning king whose tutor had been punished, had Xiang Yang caught. He was captured and executed by being torn apart by chariots. And yet, the new king kept Xiangyang's laws. The man was sacrificed, but the system survived. Over the next 150 years, legalist lions like Han Fei and Qin Shi Huang eventually would continue to apply the laws. This culminated in the unification under Qin Shi Huang in 221 BC. The lion's blueprint was now applied to all of China. Standardized laws, a connected empire, a centralized state. The how of how to unify and how to make a state powerful was perfected. But a state built on conquest is not always a state built for peace. For that, a different type of question must be answered. That is, why maintain the established order at all? After the passing of Qin Shi Huang, there was a weak heir, Qin, and the Qin began to collapse under its own harsh demands for labour, and of course court intrigues with the eunuch Zhao Gao usurping the rightful heir to the throne Fu Su. Rebellion flared up. Two figures emerged from the former state of Chu to fight for the ruins. Xiangyu was a lion reborn, a noble driven by vengeance, a pure force of destruction. And when I say lion here, I mean a lion in a negative sense, not to build order, but to destroy it through the use of violence. At the Battle of Julu, he defeated the vaster Qing army. Legend says he buried 200,000 prisoners alive. He was catharsis incarnate. The leader of the other rebellion, Liu Bang, was something quite different. A former peasant constable, a pragmatist, a fox. His first test was at the Qin capital in Shenyang. The fox, advised by Confucian-minded aides, secured it and won the people's trust. After he moved away in deference to his honoured leader, Xiangyu, the lion stormed in and gave the nobles the vengeance they craved, burning libraries and severing the past. The capital of Shenyang was sacked. Xiangyu, the lion, then carved the empire back into old kingdoms. Seeing his work of vengeance done, he foolishly exiled Liu Bang to the remote west. The lion only trusted his own strength. The fox, Liu Bang, built a web. He delegated, listened, and empowered an elite network of talent. Collected the best minds Xiangyu had alienated. At the final battle of Gaisha, Xiangyu died the hero's death, the last sacrifice of the old vengeful order. What did this fox do with his victory? Did he restore the old Chu ways? No, he moved back to the old Qing capital. He built 2 mounds like the first emperor. He kept the legalist administrative blueprint, the laws, the centralized state, the meritocratic impulse. But he ameliorated it. He blended it with Confucian ideals of morality, family and education. He used the lion's structure, but softened its edges with the fox's wisdom. The Han dynasty didn't destroy the Qin Empire. It inherited, perfected and humanized it. For 400 years it lasted. So where did it all go wrong for the lions, legalists and the Qin dynasty? It didn't. The state needed a sacrifice. Xiangyang died for its laws within the state of Qin, and the Qin dynasty had to die for its new empire. This is the eternal dance. The lions, the legalists, the Xiangyangs, the Xiangyus are the forces of clear violent action, one in a positive building sense and one in the negative sense. They are both necessary. They build the walls, unify kingdoms and break old cycles, even if they are destroyed in the process. The foxes, the Confucians, the Liu Bangs are the forces of consolidation, morality, networked governance. They ask the deeper questions. Why maintain an order at all? They smooth the rough edges and build a civilization that lasts. Chinese civilization was forged in this tension. The imperial examinations themselves became a synthesis of a legalist meritocratic system testing on the knowledge of Confucian morality and Confucian texts. It was never one or the other. It is about temperament and the needs of the time. Shang Yang, the ultimate lion, saw endless war and had the will to end it. Confucius saw amoral chaos and dreamed of goodness. One provided the spine, the other the soul, and from their struggle, their endless struggle, to this very day, a world empire was born.